Hello, Potato. So yesterday was quite the learning experience. For one thing, I learned the microphone doesn't really seem to make that much of a difference in my voice, at least not this microphone. So I don't know that I'll use it for every video going forward, but I certainly will use it for ones where I do a lot more talking and a lot less visual stuff. But overall, I think it was pretty successful, and I'm going to continue doing them periodically, and today's part of that periodically. Yep, we're doing another episode of Storytime today. So gather on the fireplace and I will tell you another tale. This story is another one from Clever Fiction, or that I'd written for Clever Fiction. The prompt for this week was Scary Tales Paper. So see if you can figure out what the pattern is between yesterday's and today's, and then you can guess what the next one might be as well. So yeah, it's another one. It's a short story. I think the limit on these is like 1,000 words, which usually meant I wrote like 2,000 words. I had to chop it down. So yeah, let's gather around the fireplace, and I will tell you a story. Paper Tiger. Susan Masterson drops the pen and shakes the building cramps out of her hands. She looks at the stack of her book, Sated, Volume 3 of the Love Thirst Saga, set out on the floor next to the hotel suite's coffee table. She estimates that she's about halfway through the 300 copies that the publishing representative asked her to pre-sign tonight. She has to have books ready for him to pick up by the morning, but she hopes her hand recovers before the reading tomorrow. It wouldn't be fair to not do live signatures for the people who come out to stand in line. Rubbing her hand, she decides to take a break. She heads into the suite's small kitchen, a kitchen bigger than the one in her apartment before Love Thirst caught fire, and she started making what she thinks of as Anne Rice money. In fact, the whole hotel room, while nothing like where she lives now, makes her old apartment look like a dump. The publisher put her up in a really nice place. She grabs the electric kettle off the counter and fills it from the tap. She knows there are bottles of water in the fridge and cabinets for her to use, but she doesn't think of herself as the kind of person who makes tea with bottled water. She feels a little pride that she's not become one of those people. While the kettle starts to rumble softly as it heats up, she hears what sounds like paper rustling in the next room. She goes back into the living room to find it exactly as she left it. The windows are shut, the air is off, it's too far into the fall to need the AC anymore. No, the room is not the same, not exactly. There's something new sitting next to her pen. A Mont Blanc worth more than the computer she wrote her first novel on. An origami crane. Hello? She asks the empty room. Is someone there? The only answer is the louder rumbling of the kettle as the water starts to boil. She wonders if the little paper bird had been there the whole time and she had just somehow not noticed it. It would hardly be the first time she had failed to notice details, something her many critics criticize her on repeatedly. Those critics really bothered her at first, but then she saw another author, although one that's not a fan of hers, say that it was okay to not like things. She took that to heart and reminds herself of it whenever she sees some of the truly horrible things that people say about her writing and herself online. Susan walks over to the coffee table, her eyes sweeping around the room for any signs of who put the paper crane there. She knows she has some exuberant fans who regularly send her apples in reference to a minor scene in the first book, but she cannot fathom why, never mind how, they would leave her a paper crane in her hotel room. She reaches for the paper crane, meaning to grasp it between her thumb and finger, and feels a stab of pain as she touches the paper. She pulls her hand back with a hiss. Looking at the flesh between her thumb and first finger, blood is welling up from a small hole, almost as if the crane pecked her with its beak. Wondering if there was a needle or something sticking out of the crane's beak. She would have to go to the hospital and be tested if there was. She bends down to look at the crane. She doesn't see anything protruding from the tip of the beak, but there's a tiny spot of blood there. She walks through her bedroom and into the bathroom, taking the little metal complimentary first aid kit from next to the sink, and starts to open it when she hears more rustling. Susan rushes back into the living room. There are more cranes on the table now, a dozen at least, and made of different colors. It looks like some are made out of newspaper, some out of magazines, or maybe the glossy pamphlets for tourist attractions they had on the rack in the lobby. One looks like it was somehow made out of toilet paper. While she ponders the cranes, she notices something else. Some of the books are gone from the stack that she's already signed. A couple dozen at least. A chill runs up her spine. The only people that should have key cards to this room are herself and the guy from the publisher. Of course, members of the hotel staff would have access. It is possible that one of the housekeepers is a fan. But how could they have gotten in and out without her hearing or seeing? How could they have come and go so fast? It would take more than one person to take that many books, or a person with a cart. She sees her phone sitting on the table between the grouping of paper cranes and starts for it. As she reaches for it, movement catches her eyes. Her jaw drops as she sees two figures emerge from the kitchen. The two figures, she first thinks of them as men, but they aren't, are tall, 7 feet at least. They are so tall the tops of their heads almost seem to touch the ceiling. And their heads, if that is what they truly are, also seem to bristle with short tentacles. At first, Susan thinks they are white with little black strips and the occasional black rectangle. But as they approach her, she realizes what the black rectangles are. The cover to her book. The strips are writing. Somehow, they are wearing copies of her book. Who are you? She tries to sound confident, defiant, but she never was a good actress. The paper figures don't reply, but they do step closer, standing in front of her with only the coffee table between them. What do you want? They don't want anything, a man's voice replies. It's what I want that matters. A man walks out of the kitchen. He's wearing a long, wrinkled black coat over a wrinkled and stained white shirt and a pair of wrinkled pants. His skin is pale, made even more so by the unruly mop of black hair sticking out at odd angles on the top of his head. And what do you want? Susan asks, more afraid of the man than the mute paper-covered figures. I want to know why your books are met with adoration and acclaim despite being complete shite, while I can't even get mine published. Millions of idiots scream at you like you're one of the bloody Beatles, and I have to work in a bookshop just to put food on my table and a roof over my head? Vampires are popular right now, Susan replies, sounding unconvincing. But what you write, those aren't vampires. Those are oversexed teenagers pretending to be centuries old. They aren't even well-written oversexed vampires. It's like reading Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan fiction. Yet all of these people drool over your latest plate of literary feces like you're the bard himself. It's just not right. I'm sorry. I didn't ask for people to... You're what? I'm sorry. Yeah, I can see how sorry you are. He waves to the roomy suite around them. This looks real sorry. Listen, sir, there are plenty of people who don't like me. That's okay. It's okay not to like things, right? Maybe you just haven't found the right audience. Have you tried electronic self-publishing? Self-publishing! The man roars. His eyes look ready to burst from their sockets. Vanity Press? My work deserves better than Vanity Press. The paper figures seem to grow in size in response to the man's anger. Their heads do touch the ceiling now, and their shoulders become almost as broad as she is tall. Susan struggles for some way to pacify the man. She knows that a better writer would come up with something easily. Well, maybe you could let me read your book. I could pass it on to my publisher. Do you think that's what I'm here for? Do you think I want your approval? Your validation? No. I want you to send a message for me. I want you to let the literary world know that their attempts to grind down the mind of the populace with ridiculous drivel like yours will not be allowed to stand. I want you to let the world know that it takes more than sex and glittery vampires to create literature. I want you to let every glorified fanfic writer know that I am coming for them. But who are you and who are they? Susan asks, motioning to the two paper-clad figures. They are whatever I want them to be. It's not just words that I can bend to my will, the man says, and with a wave of his hand, the two figures collapse into piles of loose paper. The piles slide together behind the mad writer, and, not that it matters, you may call me the paper tiger. The man steps aside, revealing that the piles of paper have formed a new shape, that of a large, white tiger. The tiger roars, baring its long paper fangs. It crouches and then springs over the table at the crafter of vampire fiction aimed at teenage girls and bored wives. Before Susan can even finish drawing breath to scream, the tiger is on her. It may be only paper, but it hits her as hard as a real tiger would. It drives her back over the sofa and into the window. The window holds for a fraction of a second, long enough for the writer's ribs to snap as she's crushed in the glass and the paper monster, before giving way. The window explodes in 1,000 little gems of safety glass, and Susan suddenly finds herself airborne. As she tumbles amid a shower of broken glass, glittering in the early night sky like one of her vampires in the sun, the tiger loses its form. What was a snarling beast is suddenly nothing but sheets of paper fluttering in the air, trailing her to the ground like a comet's tail. The paper tiger smiles down from the broken window. Already people are starting to gather around the body lying broken on the street in front of the hotel. The sheets of paper fall on them like oversized snowflakes. The man smiles and turns to leave. Tonight was fun, but there's a science fiction convention happening in Springer City this weekend, and he simply must have a word with some of those writers. So obviously, the writer in this is meant to be a specific writer, and no, I do not wish that writer any ill will. If you can sell it, sell it. Only reason I haven't sold out is because no one's offered to buy. The Paper Tiger is actually meant to be a supervillain for a superhero series I've created called Trashman. Springer City is actually the place that the Trashman series takes place. And eventually I might do something on here with some of those stories. But that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this tale of murder and mayhem. And I hope that I will see you in the next video.